So Rega have done it again. They've come out with another RS package, and if the name's new to you, RS stands for Rega Special. It's basically Rega's way of taking some of their best known decks and building them into one package that makes the choice a bit of a no-brainer. We saw it with the Planar 3, which is now the Planar 3 RS, and now it's the Planar 6's turn. Now here at Premium Sound, we are an authorized Rega retailer in central London, and we carry the full range in the store. And Rega's honestly one of our favorite brands to sell because the engineering is honest and it shows when you sit down and listen. And this one's on permanent demonstration in our listening room, so you can come in and hear it for yourself. All you've got to do is click the link in the description and book an appointment with us. Oh, and a quick one before we jump in, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because we post videos like this every week. So what's actually in the package? Well, to keep it simple, you're getting a Planar 6 platform in a new finish that looks superb, and then it's fitted with the tone arm from the Planar 8 and a choice of cartridges that you normally only find in Rega's higher end decks. And the clever bit is that it all comes in at a fraction of what you'd pay if you went and bought all the components separately. So the way I want to do this, because it's a review after all, is go through it piece by piece. What comes from the deck below, what comes from the deck above, and of course, what each of those swaps actually does to the sound. So let's start with what it shares with the more affordable deck, because that's most of it. So the plinth, the platter, the bearing, the motor, and the power supply, all that is straight from the standard Planar 6, unchanged. Now I know how that sounds. You're thinking you're paying $2,000 for a dressed up Planar 6, right? But here's the thing. The platform is the part that Rega have spent the longest getting right, so it's worth spending a minute on why the shared platform is good news here and not the catch. So the whole deck weighs about 5 kilos, and the thing is at $2,000, most turntables are trying to be as heavy and as solid as they possibly can, on the logic that vibration is the enemy and piling on mass is how you beat it. Now, Rega's whole position, and this goes right back to Roy Gandy who founded the company, is that mass doesn't actually get rid of energy. It just stores it and then hands it back to you a fraction of a second later as distortion, which is the exact thing it's meant to be solving. So instead, they go light and really stiff, and the idea there is that if the structure can't store the energy in the first place, it's got nothing to hand back. So the lightness of this turntable is not a compromise, it's part of the design. And in practice, that means the core of the plinth is a material called Tancast 8, which is a closed-cell polyurethane foam that actually came out of aerospace engineering, and then that's got a high-pressure laminate skin bonded on either side of it. And on the RS, the skin is finished in this brushed aluminium, which is the look that first turned up on the Planar 3 RS, and it's the only finish this one comes in. Now, besides looking great, that metal skin actually stiffens the plinth a little bit more, so the finish is doing a structural job as well as catching the light. Although it does catch the light, it's one of those things that photos never quite do justice to, so it's really worth coming in and seeing in person. Then you've got the bracing, and this is a phenolic resin brace above the plinth and another one below it, and both of them run from the tone arm mount across to the main hub bearing, which are basically the 2 points in a turntable that really have to stay locked together, so tying them up top and bottom keeps everything still while the record does the moving. So then on top of all of that, you've got the platter, and this is a 16mm dual layer opto-white float glass one, which just means it's properly clear and doesn't have a green tint you normally find on standard glass. Now the dual layer bit is where it's a genuine step up on the cheaper decks, because the ones further down the range run a single sheet of glass, whereas this one bonds 2 of them together, so you get a platter that's thicker and carries more of its weight towards the rim. And that mass out at the edge is what gives you the flywheel effect, which sounds like a fancy term, but all it really means is that once that platter's up to speed, it wants to stay at that speed. So when the stylus drops in and adds a tiny bit of drag, it doesn't slow the thing down. It just keeps on turning, which for a record player is sort of the one thing on the CV. Then underneath the platter, you've got the sub-platter, which is a single piece of machined aluminium. And this is the one bit I want to slow down on because it's genuinely easy to get mixed up here. Now this is still a belt drive turntable, so there's a belt and there's a motor off to one side, but the belt doesn't wrap around the outer edge of the main platter the way a lot of belt drive decks do. It actually loops around this smaller sub-platter hub instead, in towards the middle. And driving it from the middle like that does 2 things for you. You get more of that flywheel effect I just mentioned, and any little imperfection in the motor ends up having less of an effect on how steadily the platter spins than it would if the belt was tugging away right out at the edge. And then running right through the center of the whole lot, there's a brass hub bearing, which is the part everything else spins on. And it's one of those things that Rega have just been quietly refining across the planar range for years. The motor is a 24-volt low noise synchronous unit, and here's the detail I really like. Every motor is hand matched at the factory to the exact power supply it ships with, so they are a pair and they leave the factory together. And that external box is the Neo Mk2, which gives you electronic speed change, so it's 33 and 45 at the touch of a button with none of that lifting the platter off to move belts around. Plus an anti-vibration circuit for the motor, and you can fine-tune the speed yourself in steps of 1/100th of an RPM. So if you've ever put a strobe disc on the platter and didn't quite like what you saw, you can just dial it out from the front. And that's actually one that we get asked about in the store a lot, usually by people who've been living with a deck that runs a tad fast for years and never quite known what to do about it. So all of that, everything that we just gone through, is also on the standard Planar 6. Now let's take a look at the bit that comes down from the deck above, because this is what really makes the RS badge mean something. The arm is the RB880, and this is the arm you'd find on the Planar 8, the model up from this one. Now when Rega did the RS treatment on the Planar 3, the arm actually stayed put. You got the smarter finish and a better cartridge, but the same tone arm as the standard deck below it. On the 6RS, they've gone further by adding the RB880 off the Planar 8, and there's no way of getting it on the standard Planar 6. There's no box to tick at checkout, no upgrade path to it. So this package is the only way to get that arm onto this platform. And here's the funny thing, if you put it next to the arm a Planar 6 usually wears, you struggle to tell them apart because they look almost identical. All the difference is on the inside. The arm tube is cast as a single piece of aluminium, so there's no joints and no bonded sections. And the reason that matters is that every joint is a spot where energy behaves differently on one side than the other, and that turns into resonance. But it's really the bearings that matter here. They are preloaded, zero tolerance, adjusted to under 1/1000th of a millimeter, and they run in an aluminium housing with a stainless steel sleeve, whereas the cheaper arm uses plastic for the main bearing. Now, you might be wondering what that actually buys you. Well, your stylus is sat there trying to trace a groove while staying dead still relative to everything else. And any play in the bearing, any flex in the housing, and some of that groove information turns into the arm moving about instead of turning it into music. So a stiffer bearing means more of what's actually on the record ends up reaching your speakers, and that's the whole trick really. And you also get a custom stainless steel balance weight, which is thinner than the old one, so it balances a wide range of cartridges properly, plus Rega's own low capacitance cable hardwired all the way through the locking plugs. On the end of the arm, you've got the Nd9, which is Rega's reference moving magnet cartridge, and again, this is handed down from the Planar 8. It comes factory fitted and aligned so it plays straight out the box, though with Rega's 3-point mount, any of their cartridges drop straight in, already lined up, so that side of things is refreshingly painless. Now the cartridge itself uses a neodymium magnet system with a boron cantilever, and that's tipped with a fine line new diamond. And that cantilever is actually handed down from the Aphelion 2, which is Rega's top of the range moving coil and costs more on its own than plenty of whole turntables. And boron's really the point here because it's stiff and it's light, so it passes on exactly what the stylus is doing without flexing and blurring the detail on the way through. It puts out around 5 to 6 millivolts, so any moving magnet phono input will happily take it, and it tracks at 1.75 grams. And here's a little fun fact for you because it's the kind of thing that you only really appreciate up close. Rega don't buy these cartridges in and stick their name on them, they design and hand build them in-house at the factory in Essex, which honestly isn't something that you can take for granted at this price. The premium sound team actually got to have a go at it themselves on a visit to the factory, assembling part of one by hand, and honestly the experience will give you a whole new respect for what goes into the little thing that sits at the end of that arm. Now, one more thing worth knowing on the cartridge because it's changed since launch. When the RS first came out, it only came the one way, with the Nd9 moving magnet you're looking at here. But since then, Rega have opened it up a bit, so there's now a moving coil package built around their Neo MC, and then a third option that pairs the Neo MC with Rega's Phono MC phono stage. The one that we've got set up in the showroom is the Nd9 version, but it's worth knowing those moving coil options are there if that's more your kind of thing. Then there's one last thing that comes down from the deck above. It runs 2 drive belts off a twin pulley, whereas the standard Planar 6 makes do with one. Turns out that one belt wasn't quite pulling its weight. Rega reckon the second one helps it get up to speed faster and hold its pitch a touch more tightly. So that's what comes down from the Planar 8, but there are a couple of things that it doesn't get and it's worth pointing them out. So the Planar 8 has what we call a skeletal plinth, where Rega cut the material away entirely to get the mass down even further. The RS, however, keeps the full rectangular plinth, so if you're still chasing that last little bit of low mass argument, that's still sat further up the range. But, and this actually cuts the other way, the RS keeps a proper full hinge lid, and the moment you go up to those skeletal decks, you lose it. And if your turntable is living in a room with dust, or kids, or cats, a lid isn't so much a feature as it is a force field. And this is the last model in the range where you actually get one, which is something that comes up in the showroom way more often than you actually think. Now there's one more thing I'd flag, and it's the sort of thing we'd tell you in the shop anyway, so it'd be a bit odd if we don't mention it here. Because this deck is so light and so rigid, it will show you exactly how good or how bad whatever you stand it on really is. So it's happiest on a nice solid rack or a wall shelf. Now, wall mounting a turntable isn't something most people think to do, but it's actually a really good shout with a deck this light. And Rega even make their own wall bracket for it, so it's a pretty easy job to do properly. So, let's talk about money, because this is really where the whole thing comes together. A standard Planar 6 with no cartridge on it at all is £1,280. The RS with a cartridge fitted is £2,000. Now yes, that's 700 more than the plain Planar 6, but that £700 is buying you the RS series parts, and there's a genuine saving baked into the package. And it gets even more interesting when you break it down bit by bit, because the arm on its own is £765 and the cartridge on its own is £695. So against a standard Planar 6, you're basically getting both of them for a fraction what they'd cost you separately. And if you went and spec'd a Planar 8 with the same arm and that same cartridge, you'd be paying around 550 quid more than the RS. So here's how I'd actually think it through. If you're going for the standard Planar 6, you're getting a really good platform, but with an arm and a cartridge that are the weakest links on it. And the arm especially isn't the sort of thing that you can easily change your mind about later on. If you're going for the Planar 8, you're paying for the skeletal plinth and you're giving up the lid. And the RS sort of sits right in the middle, and it's the one that puts the money where it makes the biggest difference to what you actually hear. The arm and the cartridge, and just leaves the rest of the good stuff alone. So it's not really a compromise between the two, it's more like the sweet spot of the three. And it sounds like it too. It's composed, it's stable, it's quick, it doesn't really do drama, it just does timing and texture and then gets out of the way. So you'll find all three of these listed on our website at premiumsound.co.uk with everything linked in the description. Though the RS you can't just chuck in a basket and check out, it's only available in the store, so pop into our London showroom, bring a couple of your own records, and have a proper listen to it on the end of a decent system. That's exactly what the demo room's there for, and the team will happily talk you through where each of these three sit. So we started with the £2,000 turntable that weighs less than the cheap one, and now you know why. The lightness isn't a compromise, it's the whole design. And on the 6RS, Rega have wrapped it around an arm and a cartridge from the deck above for less than it would cost you to get there any other way. So which one are you actually supposed to buy? Well, for most people, on the numbers and on the sound, we reckon it's this one. At least that's our take on it, but do let us know in the comments which way you would go and what your thoughts are on the Planar 6RS. If you found this video useful, go on and give it a like, subscribe for new videos every week, and make sure notifications are enabled so you don't miss the next one. And if you're still on the hunt for a turntable, we've got a load of other reviews that you can check out right here. Till next time, happy listening.